Recording in progress.
Thank you for sharing that. Wonderful
Thank you
talk.
very much, Dasha. Okay, and we will move on to our public comment. We have one speaker in the room tonight and one remote speaker or speaker in the room who has the very tough job of following Dasha is Ali Frankie. You have 3 minutes for public comment. Emily will give you a 2.5-minute warning when there's 30 seconds left. If you could start by stating your name and address, please.
Ali Frankie, Mossman Street. Mayor Fuller, I have appreciated some things about your leadership. First female mayor in Newton, intelligent, data focused during COVID, visible at community events. Those things feel so far away now. Dr. Nolan says the schools need the money, and Mr. Bresky says the city could get it done. I believe them. I trust their judgment and their word. We are living in an era where wealthy politicians are actively working to tear down public education. For a lot of reasons, these are very dark days. It's clear that education is neither your cause nor your priority. Perhaps it's always been the pension. Halting MTSS and cutting SEL now just doesn't make sense for Newton's kids. Cutting jobs when the city has the money just doesn't make sense. In the words of my late Grandma Rudy, always while shaking her head, some people got more dollars than cents. While they're our taxes, it ends up being your money to spend or not. Instead of spending your money foolishly, I believe it is foolish not to spend the money. I'm mostly here to say that it's not too late for you to meet the moment. It's not too late for you to show extraordinary leadership in an extraordinary time. But it's getting close to too late. How do you want to go out as mayor? And how do you want to be remembered? I hope it's not as the first female mayor of Newton, who was the lady who had more dollars than cents. P.S. Happy Teacher Appreciation to all of those who celebrate.
Thank you.
Chris, I believe Dasha has something she wants to do.
Oh.
I don't know if that impacts us, but so nice.
Getting some principal love over there.
I'm so proud of you.
We made it like
Wonderful. All this and floral arranging too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dasha. Okay, let's move to our next commenter for this evening, who is virtual Laura Horst. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Fuller and Newton School Committee members. I think Dr. Nolan is also there, but it's a little hard to see. And I have to admit, this is my first school committee meeting as a resident of Newton and as a proud parent of a kindergartner at Bowen. So one of the reasons, my husband and I are both educators in neighboring districts, and one of the reasons we decided the reputation of the Newton Public Schools. And I think Newton is often touted as a beacon of excellence for education in the Commonwealth. And just echoing a little bit what Allie just shared, we are in a really, really challenging time, both in our nation and in our community. And I think how we deal with public education really shows a lot about what we value and what we care about. I've been in education myself as an administrator and as a teacher for over 20 years, and it isn't a day doesn't go by where I am not inspired by the next generation, and I hope that's true of all of you. What I realize as our students go to school every day is how much weight the world puts on their young shoulders. And as a school leader for the past decade, I realized the weight that that puts on our teachers' shoulders as well. I think one of the most powerful things we can do as leaders in the community and as educators in the community is really support our frontline workers. And those are our paraprofessionals and our teachers, our coordinators, all of the people who support our students in learning. My kindergarten son was telling me that tonight at dinner when he asked why I was rushing him off to get ready for bed, like, why are you rushing me? I said, well, I'm going to try to speak at the school committee meeting. And he said, well, what's that about? And I was talking to him a little bit about it in a way that kindergartners can understand. And he said, well, just tell them Newton Public Schools are the best. And I love my school. Bowen is the best, all the schools. So we'll keep it to Newton Public Schools are the best. And what I've really been impressed by as a parent this year is just how much support has come into his classroom from the moment that the students started the year. They had some really challenging moments, both as a class, some individuals in the classroom, some families in the classroom had some really challenging times. And the way in which the school staff, the principal Guzzi, and all the various support staff from the social worker to the METCO liaison to the teachers and the paraprofessionals, the way they supported the classroom community was absolutely phenomenal. It's something that can't be created with fewer people, given the tremendous stress that was happening in the classroom and the trauma that kids were bringing into the classroom on a daily basis. So in terms of thinking about keeping our youngest learners all the way through our oldest learners safe, both emotionally and physically, but also learning,
3 minutes is up.
really requires a robust staffing.
Excuse me, Ms. Horst, your 3 minutes has expired.
Model. So I hope you'll reconsider what you've proposed.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our public comment for this evening. We'll move to our consent agenda. We just have one item, which is the meeting minutes from April 30th. Yes, just the meeting minutes from April 30th. Is there any, well, I guess there's only one item. Does anyone want to pull the item for further discussion? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Rajiv?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Rajiv, second by Tamika, and let's take a vote. Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2, yes. Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 8? I think Barry was on. Yeah, okay, Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
Okay. That's 801, Lisa. And let's move to our superintendent's update.
Okay, I spared you all an update 2 days ago so that I could give you this one. On Ping, I just followed up first up with the data that you asked for about science meeting and exceeding scores. So you have them at your fingertips.
Thank you.
Second, I just wanted the community and all of you to know that I just returned from visiting our sister school in China, Beijing, the Jingshan School. And this is the first year that exchange program, which is the oldest exchange program in the nation for teachers in China and in the US, has started again post-COVID. This is the first time that we've sent students since before COVID. And I went and visited our 2 teachers there and observed classes. And all of the learning experiences that our teenage students are participating in. I watched presentations, we visited classes, we had meetings with the school principals, and there are much discussion and excitement and renewal. Since we last visited Jinxiang, the school has expanded tremendously. Its student body continues to grow. It's grown by over a third since COVID began. And I have to say, I was deeply impressed by the level of instruction that I saw there and the level of expertise of our young people. Our young people from Newton gave me lots of information about how they would improve the experience moving forward and things that they just couldn't live without. And our teachers are teaching English classes there and said they are just breathless with the amount of work that they are doing to keep up and to help all of the Chinese students who are studying English further perfect their English. There's been a lot of good cultural moments, and there was a proposal to expand the number of visits, meaning that they would like to explore with us, and I'll discuss this with the school committee in retreat soon, about middle school visits and an expansion of teacher exchange for the future. So very exciting. And I have to say, I visited China 10 years ago in another district, and just China is just on the move, just a country that is scaling progress at a rate that I just couldn't, it was almost a different country than when I visited 10 years ago. So really exciting. Anping has invited me to do a little podcast with him about that. So stay tuned for that. We don't know when it will be, but we're thinking about how to convey all that we learned on the trip and what the exchange means for our students. I do want to say, so many of the organizations that we're going to discuss in our policy discussions tonight, the 501c3s also support these programs for our students. And as we build the next generation of leaders for the country, this type of exchange and international experiences is really, I think, a critical component and something that Newton does uniquely well. So I look forward to discussing that more with all of you as additional programs unfold. And wanted to ask, of course, if at some point, maybe not this year because our agendas are jam-packed, you would like an overview of experiences we do provide in the Newton Public Schools that would that are either exchange-based or travel-based, so that you can sort of see the whole picture of what is offered. I know you see the field trips per approval, but I thought perhaps you might like to hear the whole program. And so we can do that next year if you would like. This cybersecurity desktop event occurred last Wednesday. This was a collaboration between the Department of Information Technology and Library Services. There was a cyber incident response team practicing to process a cybersecurity event. Members of the IT department, network, data, tech services, and digital learning teams were joined by business, finance, planning, and the Family and Communications Office, data and research, and the Office of Student Services. An external cybersecurity firm called Blue Mantis facilitated this simulated event and its reflections, and will present the team with a report on their performance in the coming weeks. It was funded through a municipal labor cycle cybersecurity grant program, so there was no charge to the district for this activity. And then recommendations for our system, if there are any impacts to policy and budget, will be brought forward to all of you for inspection. Sometimes these are done in executive session, depending on the whether safety and security protocols are being divulged to the public. So we'll work through the report, and then I will bring you any implications for that. And of course, if there's any budget implication, I will bring that. I don't anticipate that at this time, but you never know, there could be some recommendation that they make. And then finally, spring has sprung. Newton is just gorgeous at this time of year, and it's gorgeous all the time, but even more gorgeous. And kindergarten play dates are starting to happen, and outreach to our families to be, promotion ceremonies, which by the way are different from graduations. So I just want to sort of level set some expectations that graduation is for high school seniors and promotion is what we do from grade to grade underneath our seniors. So working on setting those up for everyone. Student work showcases are happening and performances and demonstrations of learning, and we hope that you can join us for as many as possible. PTO visits with school committee have been ongoing at a brisk pace all through March and April. They are winding down. A teacher voices and sharing panel about impact of budget cuts being proposed on Monday, May 19th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. before our school committee meeting. It is going to be held at the Newton North Auditorium. This is a teacher-led event, feeling that while we have portrayed different aspects of the budget cycle process and impact, teachers would like to have their own voice to that. So I, of course, applaud teachers for advocating for our students, and that's what this is about. Finally, I wanted you to know that Instructional Leadership Academy, which was funded by the Newton Schools Foundation for the last 2 years, concludes in the next month. That is a training that has happened for 2 years for every single evaluator in the school system, defining what we expect from instructional walkthroughs and what kind of feedback our evaluators give to their teachers and to those that they evaluate. It's been a deeply powerful experience, a unifying experience, and we certainly are looking at our observation reports done by our principals to see if there's progress in terms of what we were detecting and discussing last year and what we are detecting and discussing this year. Today, we had our central office retreat, digesting the mid-year state of the schools data and planning for summer professional development and for the professional development for the next year. And we're really pleased with the progress that the district has made. And I will summarize those learnings and bring them to you in the summer when we are talking about what I hope will be our newly formed strategic plan that you will see at the end of this school year. And then finally, if you've walked in the halls today, you'll see that our Jewish American History course designed an exhibit that is a sort of assessment of their course. And that exhibit starts today as part of Jewish American Heritage Month. This was grant funded 2 years ago by a hate and genocide grant from the Department of Education. Last year, obviously, at this time, we were not able to leverage that kind of a showcase. So it is student driven and student researched, and it is meant to be a summary of the learning in this particular course. So I don't think we've had anything like that here at the Ed Center before, but the students had some really great ideas and they are portrayed outside. So if you want to enjoy them on your way out or your way in, we're really proud of our students' work and wanted you to know how those grant funds were used.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Do any of the members have any questions on Dr. Nolan's update on Ping?
Mostly it's comment. Dr. Nolan, thank you very much for the science MCAS data. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And, the data does not disappoint me.
Mm-hmm.
Very solid 83% for students to exceed or meet the expectation. That's wonderful. And also I'm glad that you had a chance to visit China, and you noted that 10 years, quite big difference. And I remember first I came to Newton late 80s, and I was so excited to hear that Jingshan exchange program. But at that time, mostly people coming, that's people in China were very, very impressed at American education, and still so, probably less degree, but now things are changing so fast, especially I'm talking about the education-wise. And so I'm so happy that we have chance to not only support, maintain the exchange program, but we have chance to expand. And I would like to thank the school system and Newton community to have this program, and we have other exchange program, but this is very wonderful things, because really we need to be open-minded and to learn more about a lot of new development in education, especially the emphasis on the quality of education. Chinese education does not mean they are the best or they have all the good things, but there are a lot of things we can learn. And the science education is certainly one of the most important aspects of education. And it's more particularly critical at this moment when our country needs the advanced education in science and all other areas as well. So thank you for your leadership. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you on Ping. Any other questions?
Just something really quick. I would love to get that update you spoke about about all the opportunities for travel, for international experiences. I know our calendar is pretty packed through the end of the year, so maybe sometime next year, but it would be great to hear that.
Great.
Thank you. Other questions, comments for Dr. Nolan? Okay. Let's move on to our discussion items for this evening. We're going to start a little out of order on the agenda here so we can, some of our staff can not stay here all night. And we want to start with the school attendance.
Yes,
officer, right?
please.
Yes. Okay. So our first item we'll take up is the appointment of a school attendance officer for the 2025-26 school year.
So our Director of Family Community Engagement needs no introduction, but this is Christina Maryland, in case you don't remember who she is. And she will introduce our newest colleague. And this is actually one of the appointments that the school committee has to make in a year. So obviously we did not have this position previously, so I could not bring it to you to execute. These positions are coming to us based on the reorganization of prior positions that we have made internally prior to the budget process starting. So it's a cost neutral situation for the system, but a value added. So you may remember Lynn from her previous job in the Newton Public Schools. So Christina, you take it away from here.
Hello, everyone. So I wrote a very long letter, and I'm probably not gonna do Lynn justice by talking about her while she sits next to me. But one of the things that I'm really thrilled about is with my request for appointment for her into this role is that she's going to bring already a ton of value to the office. When it comes to family engagement, we really wanted to set a tone with how we think about attendance and really looking at it from a holistic way where we can be less punitive and less, heavy-handed when we engage with families and really trying to think about prevention, education, and having holistic engagement. And what Lynn brings to the table is not only her 9, almost 10 years, I snatched her before she could get to 10 years from the Office of Student Services. She has a really deep wealth of knowledge around students, particularly some of our most students in need that may have fragility, often experience school refusal, and has an understanding of how to tackle those types of complexities with compassion, but also her acumen and having worked in that office and knowing things that I'm still learning in the times that we've talked. She has a really strong background in mediation, which might make people think, oh gosh, what does that mean? But what it means is she can approach things and really think as objectively as possible and try to find the best possible solution for families. And really, because she's a certified court mediator, she understands the stakes when we think about taking families to court related to attendance challenges. And again, having that approach where we can do some education and preventative work. And so I am just really thrilled with Lynn being the candidate that rose to the top, and having her join the team and really learning from her as well, because although I'll be her supervisor, I really believe in mutual mentorship and having those opportunities where I can steel can sharpen steel. So with that, I am very thrilled to introduce everyone to Lynn Vincent.
Your new attendance manager of student attendance. Yeah.
It's okay. As soon as you appoint her, she is, of course.
So I'm done.
Yeah, so we're asking for you to approve appointment of Lynn Vincent to this new role.
Thank you, Christina, for that introduction, and welcome, Lynn, although it's not really a welcome since you've been here. It's, as this is a growing problem post-pandemic with chronic absenteeism. We hear about it all the time. This is, I think, a very important appointment, and I'm happy to have you on board to do that. So do any members have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Ping.
Thanks. Quickly, I know this is a new position Have we had this position before in Newton school system?
So, well, not in a full-time capacity. It was a stipended role, and for a district of Newton size, we really need somebody that full-time can work with the social workers across the schools. So, this is going to be a great addition, having somebody to focus on this all day, every day with me.
And I understand the expanded duties or responsibilities. Could you, either of you, just briefly highlight certain important duties and possible challenges, just to educate me and all the community, since this is a relatively new official full-time position now. So I think it's
Tang, you always get me with the good question. So
Let me give just a little background that the Department of Ed requires an attendance officer for every single school district. So while we've had it, we had a stipended role. I am not clear on the activities of that role in the time that I've been here. So I do know that it was mostly high school focused, but that may not be. That's actually not our place of biggest absenteeism. So we need someone who is able to have a K-12 look. The prior person was a retired guidance counselor from South who was stipended to take up cases that would go to court to file what's called a CRA, a child requiring assistance. So it was only for that reason that we had this person. That's one part of this role, but I'll let you take it from here.
So I'm still learning a lot about the attendance landscape, but a lot of what it comes to is not just the chronic absenteeism, because that term really relates to a specific metric. So it's missing 10% of school, but it's really thinking about the cases where we can educate the community about what's missed when kids miss school, so we can take on a preventative approach. That's what we found in our research. We've also found that many districts are trying to help, again, like you said, Chair Bresky, looking at the post-pandemic effect and helping re-socialize, I think would be the good word, re-socialize families around attendance, because during the pandemic, it was a very drastic change in approach. And some families haven't really been explicitly told what that means. We also have specific populations that have unique challenges with attendance, not necessarily due to anything related to them, but it's just a change in pace or environment. So for example, for some of our newcomer families, we have families that have told us, we've never seen snow and we don't have the coats for it. So finding out where the needs are is really going to be a big part of this role, because some of the things that are barriers for families are actually solvable if we just have that communication. Some of the other things are related to, issues where it may be custody related or things like that come up. And so Lynn will be working very closely with our social workers and our principal teams, just to ensure that there's a clear line of communication. And since we don't have necessarily the blueprint all filled out right now, she's doing a lot of going to be doing a lot of work over the next year. It's so cold in this room. I'm so sorry. I'm freezing all the time. She's going to be doing a lot of work with peer learning. So you'll hear Dr. Nolan talk a lot about PLCs, which are professional learning communities. They don't just exist for teachers. They exist for anybody that's working in a role where you can learn from others. And so statewide, there are attendance officers that she'll be reaching out to. And that's just best practice, so we can see what other people are doing and make sure that we're understanding industry trends and establishing best practices. And she'll be working very closely with the work that I'll be leading related to our family academy, our budding family academy, so that we can do a little bit more of the preventative work and education work, not just telling parents, school is important and send your kids, but helping illustrate for them in different ways what's missed when kids are not in school. Based on the data that we've seen, it is our younger students that actually experience the most attendance challenges throughout the year. And that's mainly because younger kids don't have voice and choice about whether they attend the school or, they don't drive themselves to school or walk to school by themselves. So some of it is helping educate parents about the importance of it, especially for kindergarten, because we see that kindergarten is our grade where we had the least differ in terms of the decrease in attendance issues from last year to this year. So that's going to be some of what we tackle. But we're going to work on an entry plan. So there's going to be a lot more to come.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sounds like you will be wonderful supervisor and, to
So-
guide her. And, especially I'm impressed talking about the chronic absence.
Absolutely.
This is a huge task, I know. It's not easy. You have to work with social worker, guidance counselor, adjustment counselor, and all other people. But this is critical. At the young age, low grades, if we do not stop that, that will be a huge problem. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ping. Emily?
Well, I'm thrilled that you have this position. As a parent, I have interacted with you through OSS, not necessarily directly, necessarily face-to-face, but certainly by email quite a bit. So I'm very happy to hear about that. And I think that one of my main concerns about this, which is personal too, because I've experienced it as a parent, is how to deal with school refusal, which is really, really, really difficult. And if you've never experienced it, good, and I hope that you never do. And knowing that there is some understanding, expertise, and sort of being hand in hand with OSS, I think is going to be exceptionally helpful in that role. So thank you.
Excellent. Rajiv?
Oh, I echo what Emily says, having also seen those challenges. Welcome. Thank you for taking this on. Christina, thank you for the comprehensive note.
You're
I appreciate that. And the only other thing I would say is, I know you're fully expecting this, but 3 months from now or 6 months from now, you'll probably get the request of, how are things going in terms of data? How many people has Lynn spoken with? How do they break down in terms of the different challenges? Which families have we been able to support, etc.? I know that'll be happening, but excited to have someone full-time in this role. So welcome.
Tamika?
Procedural question from me. Is this a appointment that we'll have to do once for the individual fulfilling the role, or is this a yearly?
Yearly.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, with that, can I make a motion? I'd like to make a motion for Lynn Vincent to the position of Manager of Student Attendance for the Newton Public Schools.
Okay. Moved by Tamika. Is there a second?
Oh, sorry about that.
Happily second.
Okay. Moved by Tamika, seconded by Emily. We can now discuss the motion. Therefore,
I'm all for the motion. I just wanted to ask one more question. Welcome to the new role. And as we face budget challenges, one idea that I've seen floated is whether you reduce bus transportation in order to save dollars. Do you have any idea yet about the interaction between attendance and availability of bus transportation, or any thoughts on that?
I don't know, but that's a very good question. I'll have to offline chat with our transportation manager and Dr. Nolan and see if there's any data we've collected.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we need to get insight into, where we have had no one to deep dive with those parents of chronically absent students. And so I don't have a clue about what the barriers are. We do know that our ELL families tend to rise up as higher in the percentage. So I just want to say that this office is like quadrilingual now, I think, with the addition of Lynn. So I think French Creole, Haitian Creole, right? Spanish, Portuguese, and English now all
Denny
covered.
also understands and speaks Portuguese, but Lynn speaks French and Haitian Creole.
Gotcha. So just we're trying to build that bench so that we can actually ask the right questions and have that sort of cultural understanding of who's absent, who's not, why, and what's happening.
And just, Mayor Fuller as well, in our office, we've started to look at our enrollment, practices and take on enrollment for our English learner population. So that's giving us a lot of insight into things, and starting to draw some, not necessarily conclusions, but starting to draw some inferences, I'll say, related to, our student populations that have the highest, attendance, chronic absence or attendance challenges and in later in their time with us so that we can think about creatively how to engage those student populations differently and the families as well.
Other questions, comments? Okay. All right. Well, let's vote on the motion to approve Lynn Vincent as our school attendance manager, whatever.
It's a very
Exactly.
long title.
Yes.
Attendance officer, yeah.
Attendance officer. Thank you. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Ward 1.
Yes, and bienvenue.
Ward 2, yes. Ward 3.
Thunder.
Ward 4.
Oui, et merci beaucoup.
Ward 5.
Not even gonna try. Yes.
6.
Benvento, yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller.
C.
Okay. That is 9-0. Welcome to your new role.
Thank you all.
Okay. Let's move to our next item of discussion, which is our private school non-public census results and an update on that interview process.
Okay, so back by popular demand, Dr. Katie Hogue and the private school census results, which we paused for a little while, but it's back. And so this was a two-step between Dr. Hogue and myself. She's got the data. I did the interviews, so I'll turn it over to you, Katie.
Hello, everyone. So as Dr. Nolan said, this is something, we collect this data every year, but we paused presenting it as a separate memo. It has been collected every year. It's just merged into the enrollment analysis report for prior years. But given the difference or the length of time between enrollment reports, we thought it was helpful to get you the data now after we've collected it. So I'll just give some quick background on this student school age children census and do a high level overview of this year's data. And then I can either take questions or we can hear about the interviews and then have questions overall. I don't know, Anna, what you'd like to do there.
Yep, we'll see what the committee, probably you, then questions, then me. Yeah.
So just a little background on the school attending children census. There's a state law in Massachusetts that requires every district to maintain a census file of all school-aged children who reside in the district, and then report to the state, to DESE, counts of students by grade level and the type of school enrollment as of January 1st of every school year. So we have data on public school enrollments in Newton, students who are outplaced by the district, and homeschooled students who reside in Newton. But we don't have data on students who live in Newton and attend private schools. So we request rosters from private schools that have had Newton residents attending in the past 3 years. So we get all those back, and then we compare those rosters from the prior year. And if there are students who were on our census file last year who didn't show up on the rosters, we send a letter home to families asking where their child is enrolled. And sometimes these families have moved out of Newton. They let us know and we take them off the census, or they let us know where their child is attending. And it's, can be a wide variety of places. So that creates our yearly census file that then populates the data that's in this report. So for this year, our total school-aged children population in Newton has declined by 171 students from last year, which is a decrease of 1.2%. On the first page, there's a graph looking at the number of students who are school-aged over the past 10 years. And you can see that we started seeing a decline in this population in the 2018-19 school year. This year, 21.7% of the school age population in Newton are enrolled in non-public schools. This is a decrease of 57 students from last year when we had 21.9% of our population in non-public schools. So while the percentage is still higher than it was pre-pandemic, it's declined slightly from last year. The elementary and middle percentage of students who are in non-public schools declined from last year, while the percentage in high school increased. Since the pandemic, we've seen cohort growth for students in non-public schools from grade 8 to 9. So when students go from grade 8 to grade 9, we've seen that cohort grow in the non-public school population of students. Prior to the pandemic, we used to see a decline in that cohort. So typically we were seeing students coming back to NPS. We've seen small growth now in that cohort of students going to private school. And then just some facts about where students are enrolled in non-public schools. Of the students who are attending private schools in Massachusetts, about a quarter of those students are in private schools that are physically in Newton, and the remaining 3/4 attend private schools outside of Newton. And then of all non-public enrollments, 26% of students are enrolled in schools that have a religious affiliation, which is consistent with patterns that we've seen in recent years. The memo also includes information on non-public school enrollments by grade and districted school based on student address and grade level. And you can see there's a variation in the percentage of the school age population in non-public schools by school. So that's what I've prepared to say, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Is there questions from members? Rajiv?
Thank you, Katie. So one question in terms of the students who attend in-state private schools, do we have an idea of how many of those are in boarding schools versus kind of day schools in the area?
So we don't ask whether they're actually boarding students or not. So we could look at which schools have an option. I know some schools have an option to board and some do not. And so we don't have that data, but we could at least look at what percentage of students are in schools that have an option to board.
Okay. And I was wondering, if it's not something we asked, we don't need to follow up on that. Okay. I was just wondering.
We do not collect that.
Okay.
So just what we're allowed or what we're required to collect is name, date of birth, gender, and grade level, and address.
Got it.
And that's what we get.
Great. Thank you. And then the one other question, and maybe this is something that came up in Dr. Nolan's more qualitative discussion, for what we have here, especially if we look at the chart where we're looking at percentages, not raw numbers, since things are shifting. You could look at this as we had a cohort of students kind of across the board go to private schools at the beginning of the pandemic for many reasons, including that many private schools continued providing in-person education. And we haven't necessarily, like, they didn't all come back. Mm-hmm. And some of them are probably, most of them may be quite happy where they are and are continuing. Is there any insight we have in terms of like the spike up, which is now slowly trending down, whether it's related to that, which I think it is, or do we not know?
Yeah, I mean, this did come up in the interviews and in the online interview as well. So a lot of folks were like, there's just been a lot of lack of predictability about Newton Public Schools since COVID. And so we're just not willing to take the chance. And it was a huge decision to move, and they're doing well. For those high school enrolled folks, it's really hard to disrupt the transcript and like bring a student back. And so they were not inclined to do that. I also just have to say, like, obviously people who leave the Newton Public Schools were not thinking we were their best choice at that time. You can see from the satisfaction ratings, it was quite low. So there was a lot of like, because one of the questions that I asked and the automated interview asked, is there anything we can do to bring you back? And they were like, oh no, that ship has sailed, right? So there was a significant enough decision for them that I wouldn't expect us to be able to rectify that. That's how I came away from the interviews.
No,
Yeah.
thank you both. And I've heard similar things, but
Mhm.
obviously that's very anecdotal, and you
Yeah.
spoke to a lot more
Yeah.
people and you surveyed a lot more people. So thank you.
Thanks, Rajiv. Barry?
Hi. Do you have a comparison to this percentage to neighboring towns or districts?
We don't have one prepared. We could pull one, so we can look at the data that's reported to DESE by town, right? So
Yeah.
by school attending children, they don't break it out in as much detail as we have
Yeah,
here,
I
but
think
we could look at it per
Just as
separate.
close as you can get. I know that it's a question that comes up often in PTO coffees, and I tend to say I think it's similar, and I feel like I've seen it, but it would be nice if we could just report it so that, because I think there's this perception that it's different, and I don't think it is.
Okay, yeah, we could provide that.
Another question. So there are a couple elementary schools that are significantly higher than others. Do we have any idea what that driver is? Is it related to the population that lives there?
So,
I mean,
yeah,
obviously Memorial Spalding is right next to Schechter, so I assume that has something to do with it. Or is that in here and I missed it?
it is not.
Oh, okay.
Yep, nope. So what's in here is you can see the percentage of the school age population in non-public schools by elementary, middle, and high school district, and there's wide variation. The patterns that you see here are pretty typical. So Ward always has the highest percentage of students attending non-public school. This year, it's 40% of the students who live in the district go to non-public school. That's pretty typical. It's a little bit higher. Like pre-pandemic, it was like 30 to 35%. So it's slightly higher than pre-pandemic. And Memorial Spalding has been higher. What I don't have at my fingertips is where I do know where they are. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
have that in here. So we could provide that too.
Yeah.
For, the districts where there is a private school right by them. Of that
Yeah.
29 or 30% of students, how many go to Solomon Schechter?
Right.
Like, we can
Yeah, I mean,
provide that.
that's an obvious one, but it would just be interesting to see if there's anything else to pull from that.
Sure.
And then one last question on the tuitioned out. Obviously, we have that data, but do you ever ask the question on, like, do we have data to say we left for special education needs, but not because like the district isn't paying, we just did it on our own? Do we have that data?
So we don't we don't have that from the census. When when families withdraw from NPS, we have a withdrawal form that we ask them to fill out. Not everybody does it, but
Right.
we're working on increasing responses to that. And we do ask, why are you leaving?
Yeah.
So that would be a place where we might capture that information if we could have everybody fill that out. And then Anna, I don't know if there's anything in the survey data. I'm trying to remember. I don't think there was anything specific to leaving for special education
Yeah, I
services.
don't have any genius ideas on how to get the data. I just think it would be interesting because those feel like, if we feel like they didn't have the program when they were here and now we do, and we want to explain to them why they should come back, it would be an easy.
Well, I do think there's a natural way that occurs, because if they are receiving special ed services anywhere else, we still are the LEA. So we still have to manage their IEP, and they still come back to us for reconvene. So I'm certain that if they're eligible for anything in our system, we still talk to them and they're still offered any new programs that might be good for their young person. I do want to just add that, related to the Ward school, I'll say just a lot of private school attending Ward parents did respond to the interviews and came in for meetings with me, especially small group meetings. And there was a larger amount of choosing religious education for safety reasons, that particular school just had more people tell me that. Now, I couldn't control the sample of who showed up and who responded, but just my own mental note of how many Ward families said that they were going for religious reasons, which was amplified by the events of October 7th, and they're feeling safe with their children. Citing, wanting security officers on site, which many religious private schools do have. So I do have insight into the Ward. I just heard a lot of feedback about that particular school.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Anping?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that data. Can I assume that since I've been on school committee for past 7-8 years, this is the first time we got this kind of detailed report, or you did it before? I don't recall.
Yeah, we've done it before. So this memo is in the enrollment analysis report each year as a separate section, but we don't typically end up talking about it because there's so much in that document.
Oh, okay.
So it is there if anyone wants to go look at some historical trend data. It's in those. They're online. You can find it there. And then we've done a few years where we've presented it separately. We didn't do it last year, maybe not the year before, but
Okay.
it's been a while.
Well, that's probably a good idea to separate this report so now we can focus a little bit more. Otherwise, with 50 pages of data, you just lost, how to ask questions. But again, this is very meaningful because after COVID, people are more sensitive about the, in private school enrollment number. Some parents came to me in private meeting. They said, oh, there are 25% of students in Newton going to the private school. I said, that high? I said, I have data. And then I ask you for help, and turned out to be 21 point something, right? Still high as we acknowledge, but not as high as parents, because that kind of perception is not very helpful if they just spread words. Oh, now 25, 26. So in that sense, probably the past historical data could give us even more indications whether number. You acknowledged, we noted that the number is still higher than pre-pandemic. So, but here we didn't have specific. Could it be 18%, 19%?
Yep, it was about 18 to 19%. It fluctuated year to year slightly, but within that range. That's the percentage attending non-public schools pre-pandemic.
Yeah, that's something, I think I commented before, something we need to be mindful. And also regarding that war school situation, I was taken back, 40%, right? We already had challenges of low enrollment at the war school. Now in that, if that parents now as Dr. Nolan mentioned that because of October 10th situation, war and all that, that's very sad situation. And that we as school committee and school department, we really have to do something. Otherwise, it's really concerning. If close to 0.5% of students sent to private school that have multiple challenges for school department. Now, lastly, regarding table 1, I think I asked that question before, but I don't recall what's the answer. For the high school numbers, for the elementary school and middle school, 23 to 24 compared with 24 to 25, the percentage seems decreasing a little bit. But for high school, increased from 24.7 to 25.1. So, and then look specifically, grade 11, grade 12. Those numbers are very interesting. For grade 11, there's quite the drop, right? 17.1 drop of the private school enrollment from 23 to 24, 24 to 25.
Yep, so that is looking at grade 11 to grade 11, 1 year to the next. So that's just looking at 2 separate populations of students.
Okay.
The last column there shows you the cohort change, looking at the same group or cohort of students. So if you look there, that would be the kids who were in 10th grade in 23 to 24, who moved to 11th grade in 24, 25. It basically stayed stable right? It's a decrease of 1 student. So really that large drop for the current 11th grade is because the prior year 11th grade was really big, right? It was 375 students in 23-24. And then this year they've presumably all been, moved on to grade 12. They've actually had a cohort decline there of 16 students. So the 2 columns are looking at, either just the absolute grade change or the cohort change.
Okay.
But that's really just because that grade 11 was so large, that cohort was so big.
So if we look at the specific cohort,
Mhm.
the grade 11 to grade 12, so here grade 11, 23, 24, 375,
Mhm.
and then 24, 25, 359. So that much change. Okay,
Mhm.
that explains. But still, there's some reason then probably moving students, moving out students, not same cohort, but just some new students moving or moving out.
Right. And so you can see in the cohort change column for grade 9. So that's looking at the kids who were in grade 8 last year in private school who have moved on to grade 9, or the current grade 9 this year, was an increase of 17 students, 17, which is 5.3%. So that's really the largest growth, was that group of students moving from grade 8 to grade 9. And we used to see a decline in that cohort of students. We had a lot of students coming back to MPS in grade 9. And since the pandemic, we've seen a growth in that cohort in private school. So rather than coming back, they're choosing to stay, or, people's choices have shifted.
Okay, so in that kind of situation that compare same grade, we have to be mindful. It's not apple to apple, so to speak. Okay, but overall, high school 24.7 or 25.1, that percent seems a little bit high. I don't know. Historically, we don't have data here. Do you think that's similar to the past pattern, or?
Yeah. So if you look at page 3, there's a graph, and it does not have the values. So we could add those to make it easier to read in the future. But if the graph on page 3 is showing the percentage of the population by grade span in non-public schools. So you can see the high school has always been higher than elementary. High school and middle were pretty similar. It is still higher than it was. It used to be around like 20 to 22%.
Yes. Thank you.
Pre-pandemic.
Because the middle school and elementary school, particularly elementary school, dropped a little bit more significant.
Yep.
And middle school, a little bit. But the high school seems almost same, right? No change. Okay, well, that speaks of something. If elementary school and middle school drops and high school, and we can assume that because high school going to college, if some parents have concern about quality, academic quality, I don't know. I shouldn't probably assume too much, because there might be other reasons. But certainly, ideally, we probably expect some kind of, drop along with the elementary school, middle school. And I possibly, if we have more data, I do like to know whether other neighboring districts, same situation, or just Newton's situation, then we probably need to be more concerning. Again, I appreciate that very much. And, these numbers certainly help a lot when, when we have conversation with committee parents, and when they ask questions, without data, they can make all kind of assumptions. But now with data, it's much more helpful. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Can I ask for one follow-up? That table 1 just showing by grade, could you put together just that same table for a pre-pandemic year? So 2018, 19?
Yep, we already have it. I could just send it.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm just curious to see how that distribution shakes out, and what the influence is some of these lower grade levels, particularly if it's an oldish child, didn't have the pleasure of our hybrid experience, and if that's contributing to some of the increased participation in MPS relative to some older grades. And then in terms of the high school numbers, I think that's kind of one of the more disturbing things in this that I'm hearing. It's, you know, I know it was historically, and I'm just going to say this anecdotally, you know, I know a lot of folks who sent their kids to middle school private, and then they went back to high school because, you know, they felt that was in their kids' best interest, and now families are choosing otherwise. I don't know what we can do to suss it out further. One thing I might be interested to see is just the same time series you have, the 10-year time series. If you could maybe break that out by each high school as a starting point, I would just be curious and trying to dig in and figure out, you know, is that really a perception of quality issue that's driving that?
So two things that have come up just in my companion research, because I started by accident reaching out to these 8 to 9 families, not knowing this data when I was hearing from them. In that case, those 3 families were leaving because of athletics, that they had decided that they wanted more athletic opportunities, like at a Catholic memorial and that kind of situation, couple scholarships for that. So I was about to share with you that 2 follow-ups emerged from this data. One, we'll reach out to those families who were 8 to 9, and we'll just see if they'll talk to us. Not everyone is like yippee skippy to do that, so I just want you to know. But the second is we just contracted with NEASC and MIAA to do an athletics program audit. So of both schools, which is really a good idea anyway, because at South, Director Pat Gonzalez is retiring at the end of this year. So it's a huge opportunity for the new person to come in and actually do an entry plan and use that audit process. So that has just started and will head into the fall, and you'll receive some reports on that. So I suspect that through that process, we're going to hear some additional feedback, because surveys are going out to families, families of athletes and families who don't have athletes, and we're going to ask about that.
And just to add to that context of the families who do fill out the withdrawal form that we ask them to fill out, a lot of the reasons for leaving are also related to athletics. Again, it's potentially there's some sample bias there on who actually is filling it out. But I've seen many comments about that too, specific to high school.
Okay, Tamika?
So not to belabor, but just further on that point, I'm glad you raised that issue, and I'm glad that we kind of plunked it into this discussion, because over the years, you know, as my tenure as a parent for NPS, many of the families I know in high school who have left the district while actively being high school students have done so for athletic reasons. So one of the benefits of having such wonderful athletes and student athletes is that others are recognizing those talents as well, and students do have scholarships and the like elsewhere. So glad that we've put that in the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamika. Other questions? Okay, should we move it? Oh, Rajiv, sorry.
Actually, I didn't know, Dr. Nolan, if you were going to cover the qualitative piece. I had a couple of questions for that.
Yeah, I was going to, let's roll into that piece. Yep.
So first, I just want to say, well, thank you, Katie. And one of the reasons that we broke this data out again this year is that I had done these interviews, and it seemed like a good time to put them all together for your discussion. Please remember that all of the adaptive interviews were done last spring, and then I have been doing 2 years worth of interviews with families who will talk to me about this issue. The online interview is not perfect, right? It's an adaptive scenario, and school committee member Levy brought to me one parent who was just very upset, rightfully so, that the AI kind of scolded the parent for being too colorful with their language and really angry. And it said something to them like, could you say that in a less angry way or something? And that just set that doesn't build trust. So it's not perfect. And there are a couple responses in here that I glossed for you with a footnote that lets you know that occurred with the AI. I reported that to the software developers and kind of kidded them for their AI not being able to listen to tough feedback. it did not filter anything out. And the reason that I gave you all the pages of the raw data is I just wanted to increase your confidence that nothing was taken out because of those adaptive questions. It was just sometimes parents were turned off by it. You'll see in the data, if you read it, it'll say, I thought you wanted my opinion on this. Like parents will write in something like that. So there were some instances of that in this data. You have the full data here. So the themes though are corroborated by the interviews. So it's not just a generated report. I cross-tabbed it with my 55 interviews and my focus group interviews. There are not a lot of surprises here, either to you or to me, from the kind of entry plan feedback that I received when I got here, or that you shared with me as school committee members in my meetings with you when we started together. I wasn't shocked by these responses at all. I was informed in a sort of a surprise about the religious choice and safety piece, about the actual wanting of more security for different religious reasons. So that was certainly not something that I expected. The other part was there was just a large portion of folks who just said, look, private school is what we do. It's what generations of my families have done. Don't take it personally. Like, it's not about you. This is our personal decision. And when I asked them the question, is there anything that we could do that would make you consider the public schools? They said, it's just not something that we would even ever consider. So those are just those kinds of pieces. And of course, I gave the Net Promoter Score question, but these are probably our most unhappy, unsatisfied families, right? So it's like a negative 69% promoter score. But you'll see us collecting this data in various ways over the course of time. We just had our central office meeting today where we're putting together the kind of evidence of effective measures that we're going to put before you to take a look at how do we want to measure the effectiveness of our strategic plan in the next 5 years. So a Net Promoter Score is one way, but it's really not finely tuned the way that these interviews are, right? So you can get a Net Promoter Score, but only if you're going to dig into a lot of the other reasons for why you get that Net Promoter Score. So I actually enjoy this part of the work of asking people, how can we be better? And, how are we serving your child or not serving your child? So I don't mind doing this kind of work. And I think it keeps us on our toes and keeps us fresh and connected to our constituency. So the big themes were not shocking to me. As you know, we can run a common grounds and differences report with Thought Exchange. And you'll see a chart that says, no matter what side of happy or unhappy or reasons for leaving, perceived lack of special education support, needing more student support, and large class sizes were every side of the interview. Those came up, whether you were on side A or side B, meaning you may have disagreed on almost everything else, but those were things that those swaths of people agreed on. So for example, someone who went for a religious reason and someone who went for an athletics reason also cited reasons of student support and large sizes or large team sizes or those types of things. So that's the sort of nexus is student support, special education support, and large class sizes. Katie asked me the question, is that just a high school discussion? So I went back and kind of tried to investigate that. It did not seem to shake out by high school or elementary school. It was just a comment that came up over and over, a perceived piece with the idea like, who's really noticing my child as a learner? Do they know my child? How do I know that they know? So it was also done up in the amount of feedback that they were getting and things that you've said to me as a committee. There wasn't any assessment data that parents were really getting. So they were sort of wondering, like, how's it all going? And it put an undue pressure on teachers for conferences and report card comments, which can only take you so far. So those were kind of the big takeaways from here. And again, things like leveling or cultural and social issues. I feel like I have an identity crisis on communication. Like 50% of the people say, stop communicating with us so much. And 50% say, bring on more. We can't get enough. It's not enough. This group said not enough. their major piece. And then there were like niche issues, like I want AP Russian back. And like, there were a couple people, going on about that. Mostly all of these things about loss, things that the perception of loss, like honor roll or publishing GPAs for ranking for class rank, awards nights, those types of pieces that are holdovers from another time that used to be traditions here. Lots of wanting the traditions to come back. So those were the learnings that I took, the key learnings that I took away from these interviews.
Okay.
Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Questions? Rajiv?
So, well, thank you. Couple of things on this. So first, no surprises, as you said. Both the quantitative and qualitative reports pretty much line up with what we've heard over the last couple of years, and at least for me, line up with families, friends. I know in the city who have kids in private school, and in some cases have one kid in private and one in public for specific reasons. And it could be athletics. In some cases, it's the level of activity of the child where they really need to be engaged in a small group and so on. So I do think parents are trying to make the best choices they can, right? Given their means and given what's available. So no surprises on that front. One caution on NPS, meaning Net Promoter Score. So the NPS is an imperfect metric, and I think if we look at that, especially from this group, it's not going to give us a lot of insights. But again, there's a lot of business literature on that, and companies that fixate on it end up having challenges. The one other thing that I've heard actually is from early high school students whose parents moved them out, and at least in a couple of cases where they looked at the risk that came up for high school seniors last year in terms of grades being reported often to colleges that had rolling admissions, recommendations not being submitted within deadlines and so on, and just did not want to have their kids in their senior year be subjected to that risk. And I don't know if that came up at all in qualitative discussions, but I have heard this.
Yeah. It didn't, but I don't know if those who would be leaving had decided to leave at the time of this. Yeah. This was last spring where I sent this out. So that was right in the midst of post-strike. I mean, maybe, but I didn't hear that here. They didn't say it to me.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Hopefully that.
I mean, they did say things like the lack of stability, and they cited COVID conditions, the work to rule, strike. They said those things, but they didn't specifically say that about risk for seniors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rajiv. Other questions? Tamika?
Less question, more observation of my own. I think the takeaways that you have from this exercise is it's useful. It's a useful exercise. It is trying to see what we otherwise wouldn't be able to see or capture. I think there's an important asterisk on that gathering of information, which shouldn't be forgotten, which is that thought exchange, awesome tool. Again, it's a useful way of capturing feedback. It doesn't allow for nuance, right? It allows a response like, oh, there's not enough AP classes, to be unchallenged in the sense of, well, what do you mean? Like, what is your understanding of the level of AP classes that are offered in NPS? It's not able to do that. At least I haven't seen that it's able to do that, that type of iterative feedback gathering mode, where you can really get gritty with the perception versus the reality. Because I think there's so much, and you mentioned it in your comments, your takeaways from all of this, there's so much to the perceptions as to, that drive people, that drive their decisions to leave or withdraw from NPS, that may or may not match up with the realities of the offerings here. So I think, again, it's useful, it's instructive, it's something that we should do on a regular routine cycle, but we should also just understand that this is an imperfect tool. I don't think anyone's saying that it is perfect, but
Oh, no.
just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I think here's a, if I may, Mr. Chair, a great example of what you just said. So if the, what made you leave, need better sped services. Why is that important to you? The AI interview follows up because we need to have science-based reading instruction. What would the follow-up look like that might change your mind? Hire a specialist in dyscalculia, which is math disability. Like none of this makes sense together. So like to your point, if I knew who this was, I would be able to say like, let's talk about all the things, right? So in and of it's by itself, but since we had this whole database of people that I didn't even some of them had never even set foot in a Newton public school, it seemed like a good way to do it. I'd rather do reach outs now to people who leave from here and say like, let's have a conversation if you're willing.
Okay. Well, thank you, Doctors Hoag and Nolan, for this. This was, I know, something we've been talking about for a long time within the committee and getting at the heart of, why folks are choosing some other place than NPS. So appreciate that this is, the interview and survey part is a new piece of this that will help inform the data piece. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Katie.
Okay, let's go to our policy updates, which
Do you want to do this one?
oh, I'm sorry, missed the community survey data and student survey data.
So there are two surveys that went out in January of this year. One, a family caregiver survey created by the Panorama Company about students' experience in the Newton Public Schools. And then one that we created for all high school students, which was a high school climate survey. So you have reports on each of these. The Strategic Planning Committee used this data to help with the strategic planning. And so each of these surveys had a good number of responses, although my work, of course, is to get our 2,000 parents number higher. But as you know, because you went through COVID in this district, people were really surveyed out, and 2,000 was a pretty good number. I don't know what you were getting in COVID, but this looks typical. That said, they gave thousands and thousands of responses, including free responses, which were really insightful. So I created summarized reports from those trends and compared that with national data for the Panorama survey. We can certainly bring you a deeper dive into this if you're interested in it, but it didn't really veer much from what we have been hearing in our focus groups, my entry plan, the 3 entry plans of our new central office administrators, and what we learned from private school parents, like some of the similar criticisms. And then, some new insights, like our current parents are asking for more frequent and transparent communications from the schools. So I was sort of under the assumption that people were like parent squared out. But that isn't what these folks have said in this particular survey. There were specific questions getting at what you had been asking me about how many families invest in outside academic support. So that information is here. There's a wide range of spending, but $10,000 annually is a number that came up a lot in terms of whether it's outside sports clinics, math tutoring, or college counseling. Those were the types of services that were brought up over and over that parents were saying. In contrast, students, who I guess you could say are our direct clients, were largely very satisfied with the services that they are receiving from the Newton Public Schools, the responsiveness of their teachers, the care, the respect. They are worried about the respect for school buildings, and they are concerned about like access to guidance counselors, but they feel safe at school. 79% said they agree or strongly agree that they're safe at school. That technology is integrated effectively, that teachers demonstrate strong content knowledge, and that they're readily available for extra help. So I also asked the sort of modified Net Promoter Score question to the students, like, how proud are you to be part of the high school? And the data was extremely high, that students felt huge pride, and a lot of comments that were just glowing about the impact that school has on their daily life. And, you know, we did get a lot of responses from students, and we're diving into anything that looked weird. Some of the things that were odd were that, considering that middle school and high schools were given time during the school day to fill this out, the low numbers from three of our middle schools was perplexing to us. And so what we tried to find out was, did they just not finish it? Or was there something that we missed that day that it was given? So we're still exploring it was different from the two middle schools we already talked to. So like, I'm not really sure how we missed the boat there. So we can do better for next year's scores. We may slightly change the family survey because we are reducing costs for next year, and Panorama is extremely costly, and it is a clunky, unhelpful user interface. We're paying for a lot of money for the norming feature of like, what does the rest of the United States say? And I just want to say Panorama also has really great resources and things that we don't use because we don't want to pay for the additional pieces to go with it. So we're not sure if this is going to be the exact survey for next year, but the categories will be the same so that we have some parallel data. So actually the reports are pretty clear about what families are concerned about. And I will say that homework load, school start time, recess and lunch options came up over and over and over. So time on learning and what that looks like, and time of the school schedule at the high school has just come up a lot. And a few of you have asked, you know, can you survey about the experience with the change in the school start time? I mean, I'm happy to do that, but we should always be prepared to act on what we survey people and what they tell us. So if we do that, you know, and we suddenly find out that there's all kinds of issues with our school start time, we might want to be prepared to solve them. So I just say that as someone who went through 3 failed votes on this in my former school district. And I'm sure this was a hard one decision in this district as well. But that came up a lot about the time, whether it was not enough time on learning at a particular grade level or too much time. Again, the sort of under enrollment that we've discussed at the high school and teacher absences, all of those things came up again in these. So again, I don't think there's huge surprises here, but I'm happy to take any questions of anything that's interesting to you.
Thank you. Emily?
I have 2 quick questions. First of all, I'm a little confused as to what grade levels actually responded, because it talks about 9th through 12th, but then there are middle schools that are listed in percentages, but not what grades actually responded.
So it's grades 6 through 12 were given the option. I called it the high school student climate survey analysis because we barely had 10% of our middle schools filling it out. So I didn't want to pretend like this was a comprehensive look at middle school feedback.
It was 6 to 8 as well, but
yep,
not great.
Yeah, so we've got to retool that and figure it out.
I was a little confused.
Yep.
So that's one. And then my second quick question is, are we going to get YRBS-esque type data in the fall?
We are. So we thought we would bring these back and look at those. And at that point, we'll actually have a student well-being area of our strategic plan, of which YRBS will be one metric that we will use to track the health of, the student well-being in the district.
Excellent, thank you.
I think I've heard part of the answer to this, but in terms of homework and parent perspectives, I hear kind of diametrically opposed
Same.
perspectives.
Yep.
And I've talked to parents who are,
Yep.
my kid barely has any homework. How do you get better at math if you're not practicing? And others where it's like there's too much homework and it's not great for the mental health
Right.
and well-being of my child.
Yep.
Is that pretty much
100%.
Okay.
We have a complete identity crisis on this. Yep.
I think we were twins.
Yeah.
and Tamika may be hearing both of
No,
both
he's
sides.
hearing all of it all at once. Yeah. Yep. No, I actually look forward to this. I mean, it's been on my list and Jill's to develop a homework policy for the district and what's that going to look like, because it varies within grades. It varies teacher to teacher who might be teaching right next door to each other. So, I mean, most districts have like some guidance about what that should be. Parents generally try to revert to whatever was done to them. So that there is that nostalgia of that. What we have done is we have actually partnered with Hanover Research, and we've asked them to give us the best practices in homework currently. And that's part of our elementary working group budget that we've already enacted. So Hanover Research partners with districts, and they have a database of, just like a university, of research on various topics. This will be one that we will report to you on. There's a few others, but
The comment about parents are looking for what they went through is spot on.
Yep.
Because again, anecdotally,
Mhm.
that's what I've heard.
Yep.
Other questions, comments? Tamika, then Ping.
Thank you. Just to follow up on the question or the musing about essentially opening up Pandora's box by asking questions about schedules and things like that. My opinion is you ask those questions and you gather the information, because sometimes the solution might not be a linear one. It's not the obvious solution, but there's a workaround that makes that responds and that addresses the concern in a way that remediates it, but not necessarily throwing the whole thing out, a la high school schedule overload. So I think it's a good idea to understand what are the challenges and think just with fresh eyes, renew eyes every couple of years about, is this working for our students? How do we improve it? How do we make it better? What are the needs? And so to that, I would say, let's ask those questions.
Thank you. Ping.
Thanks. Really appreciate tremendous efforts. This is doing any kind of survey is never easy. And, even the efforts to get the people to participate itself is tremendous, and say nothing but to review and analyze. So this is very impressive to do this work. In terms of data, I'm just a little bit curious here. Look at the percentage. Either I did not understand fully, or probably there's some a different way to add the percentage. For example, race and ethnicity. I'm really interested in that. The number probably we do not add these numbers to 100%. So, for example, white, Caucasian 61%, Asian 28%. I'm curious, this 28% of total population, total number of people who responded to the survey, or because if we add all these numbers way above 100, so if 20%, for example, 28% out of the total respondents then that's impressive because Asian students about 21%, so more Asian students responded. But that seems not the case.
So this is out of the total number of students who responded. That's how many chose that that racial category.
Unless they choose multiple, because if you add 61, 28, 10, it's already almost 100. And then you have 6, 5, 5, 2. So seems it's possible students might check
More than one box.
Yeah. Okay. That's the only way to explain. Otherwise, I just could not figure out. Okay, that seems make sense if that's checked that. Thanks. And in terms of key findings, certain percentage seems a little bit low, but of course we have no way to compare with the past survey if we had a similar one. If no, for example, respect among students. 59 participants agree or strongly agree students are respectful, but still 41% seems a little bit concerned or not happy, or so that number seems a little bit high. But again, if high school students, sometimes we don't know their behaviors. If historically the percentage is similar to this, then nothing probably we can do to significantly change. But if COVID-19 and other reasons, impact on this percentage, then probably something we could think of. I don't know, but I just thought this number was a little bit low.
Yeah, so this is the first time we've done this survey, so we won't know. We'll keep at it and we'll sort of see if that's a normal number or not. And it's not a nationally normed survey.
And also, we don't know those students who responded, whether they are kind of a normal representation of total population, or there could be some kind of either.
I can sort it by subgroup and look at it that way.
So I'm certainly not expert at all. When you have half the people who respond to the survey, whether those people are normally happy or they're critical of something. So we don't know how to interpret, if we want to use this as representative of the whole population. So we have to be careful,
Right.
And I have to remind myself. And there's also the last but one, clear vision and goals. And I don't know the original question, but seems 60%. A little bit low than I thought. But again, here we're talking about the school or program has clear vision and goals. That probably is tough to define. How do you define that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we are actually talking to our students about school or program goals. Like, I don't believe that our principals or teachers are talking about, here's the district vision for your education. And I think we do our thing. And there's a lot of research that says the more agency and input you get from your students, the higher their success. So I think that if we ask more questions like this, and we also have a new strategic plan and students were involved, and the portrait of a learner and students were involved, hopefully that score will go up. Where kids have been involved in the creation of the vision and goals for their school system as they should be. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and also here says school or program. So this is probably the question itself was designed a little bit too vague.
Well, it's trying to get at folks who might be in programs that are not at schools. So not to leave anyone out. So like Central High School and Springboard, those are not schools, but they are programs, and they have a very clear goal and vision for those programs.
Okay,
So,
that's not what
yeah.
I was thinking the program.
Yeah.
I thought of probably, some science program or, technology program, but that's different.
Right.
Okay. Again, this is wonderful survey, and I thought, those data certainly give us chance to think more or probably explore or even design better in the future. But again, I know it's challenging, and again, I appreciate that you spend a lot of time, or the school, the central leadership spend a lot of time to collect data, design, survey, and collect data, and also including the private school parent survey. That's quite significant, and I don't recall we have ever done before. So, and all these things will help us. And then you mentioned the strategic planning, which is very important for us to have the data to help us to plan our future school programs and the planning process. Thank you.
Excellent. Ping. Anything else on surveys? Okay, let's move on to our next item, which is the policy updates that we had a first read on this past Wednesday night. I have had a couple members reach out to me saying they might want some more time to think about this. Normally we have 2 weeks to digest between our meetings. In this case, we had a long weekend effectively to digest. So I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to that. I might like to have a little more time myself to think through some of these things. But I'll leave that up to the committee to decide. I'll just open it up to questions at this
Can I
point.
just make one
yeah, please go ahead.
clarification? In speaking with a bunch of you over the weekend, I just want to make clear that all the committee has to approve are the policy revisions, the guidance document that Amy and I have been working on with Jill, with our PTO partners and our booster partners, and all of the follow-up that with other groups as we're working through that. Those guidelines are really under our jurisdiction around operations. Like, obviously, we want to hear from you because you have to be the ones who eventually bless the things that come out of the guidance documents. But I just want you to know, like, we are getting to yes with our booster organizations and our PTOs, and having an interactive dialogue with them about how do we operationalize this? And that's what the guidance document is. Without putting a chilling effect on activities or fundraising in an already difficult time to get people to volunteer. And I just want to be really clear with the public, like, this is simply to allow the school committee to do their financial and legal obligations under fundraising and acceptance of donations. How we do it is really what Amy and I are after with the guidance documents, and that we've been going through this process with all the folks who do the most fundraising and the most activities in our system. Anything to add, Amy, or you feel good about that? Okay, great.
Okay, with that, I'll open up the questions. Emily?
I just have a quick logistical question. I know you just talked about the fact that we shouldn't be talking about logistics because that's going in the document, but my question is June 15th, if this does get implemented, that would be when the support organizations would have to get sort of their draft of what their budget is going to look like for the next year. So does that move quicker to give them time? I mean, I know a lot of PTOs do that already as best practices.
Yes, it does mean that somewhere between June 15th and June 30th, we'll have to have a meeting to approve those.
I was just thinking about in between our approving this and they're having enough time to be able to put their documentation together between the 15th and the end of the year.
So they will have, they'll have all their stuff done by the 15th. That's a date they suggested as doable.
It makes sense from a PTO perspective. It's less the PTOs that I'm concerned about and more about the boosters and the theater.
Now, the idea is that they then have the summer to go forth and do all the things that they said they were going to do and do all the planning, and that you all don't have to meet in the summer to approve those things, right? So they can just hit the ground running in the fall and move ahead. And you know what's coming, and there's no surprises about the calendar of events, the fundraising, all of that can be done in the summer.
So depending on when we actually approved it.
Yep.
Okay. Other questions, Rajiv?
if there are members who are still going through and trying to, provide, I'm okay with delaying the vote on this since it was a shorter period. I do. My one other comment was when I went through these, the biggest challenge is the logistical side of it. Like I didn't see anything in here that was necessarily objectionable or kind of brought up issues that I thought were going to be very challenging. There were two things that I think are critical. One of which is being very thoughtful about how much oversight we actually have over independent 501c3s. And it sounded again from the last discussion that Jill has put a lot of thought into this, and we are aware of where that line is. So that was one. And the other is back to, we don't want to have a chilling effect on bake sales or, put a lot of red tape or approvals in the way of fundraising, which again is nowhere close to where it was pre-pandemic. So again, I'm back to, I think the execution is where the challenge is. I am comfortable with what we have here, but the devil will be in the details of how it gets put in place. So if others want to hold off on this until our next meeting, I am okay with that, but I don't know what the group thinks.
Thanks, Rajiv. Other questions? Yep.
So Anna, I know we've talked about this, but I still am not able to find in the guidance document where the school committee accepts and approves, because section 6.3 seems to indicate that lies with the CFO.
So I had Amy respond to you, but you haven't been able to read it yet.
Okay.
So the issue is that unless there's a significant change, whatever the school committee approved in the first iteration, the proposal goes through for the school year. So Amy, did you want to reiterate what you said in the email to Alicia?
Sure. And my apologies. It's flipped over into my NPS email now. And I do recognize that the language in 6.3 should be clearer. And I think that's something that we will need to revise. To reiterate what Dr. Nolan just said, the initial approval of each of the budgets goes through school committee. That language can be clear so that there's no confusion, that its proposed changes to the approved categories would go to Liam for review to determine if they should come back to the school committee for reapproval. And again, it's to reinforce what Dr. Nolan said. We're trying to do this in a way that creates the least administrative burden, not for NPS, but for the organizations. And that's what we're trying to do there.
Okay. I guess I still sort of then have the question, since our obligation is to accept, should we be not approving the budgets on the front end, but doing the detailed acceptance on the back end?
Well, that's how we started this.
Oh, we did.
Yep. And we've walked our way around to here. So would you mind, just so everyone doesn't think I'm a crazy control freak, what you heard at MASC?
Yeah. So I did the new school committee member training, and they talked a lot actually about the requirement for accept every single donation. And I followed up and I said, in a giant district, do we accept the $2 donation at a bake sale? And they said, yes, we do accept those things. We have to accept them. So then that did bring me back to questioning sort of approving a budget on the front end to me is pretty different than accepting something that has come through. So I sort of, I guess, throw that into the fray.
Quick clarif, that is great training. I still have notes from it. Did they say anything specific about the raising of money at a bake sale versus accepting the $2, or obviously it's more than that, when those raised funds come into the school district? Because, sorry, the distinction is between the fundraising, which we are now applying more rigor to in terms of oversight, versus accepting a gift that a PTO provides for at the school level or at the district level, which we do approve, like in kind of in aggregate
We didn't talk much about fundraising.
fundraising. Okay, because I feel like that's the big change here, which is if you're fundraising and you're putting NPS into that fundraising effort, the name of NPS, then we want to know what you're doing, because you could be fundraising for something that is antithetical to what we do, right? So more challenges.
So, okay. Where do folks want to hold this and have this to think about, to vote on at our next meeting, or? Okay, then I'm seeing noddings of heads that yes, that might be, okay. So why don't we do that? And we will put that on the agenda for a vote for our next meeting. And in the meantime, obviously, please.
Yeah, I'd love to have any answers ready for you that night, before that night, just so that we can move ahead with this.
Yeah, for the sake of efficiency, I would say, and if there is issues that folks have, then let's try to iron them out over the next 2 weeks with Amy and Dr. Nolan. Okay, let's move to our next agenda item, which is school choice discussion and possible vote. We just had our required public hearing on school choice prior to this meeting. We did not have anyone make public comment during that meeting. That is, just for everyone watching, is required of the school committee every year to have a public hearing on whether we will affirmatively choose to participate in the Commonwealth School Choice Program or not participate in the Commonwealth School Choice Program, where children from other towns can attend the Newton Public Schools. So, Dr. Nolan has not recommended we participate in the program this year, as she did last year, given our changing circumstances and the uncertainty we face from a budget perspective. I don't know if anyone else has any comments, or if someone wants to put forward a motion. Barry, go ahead.
I'd like to put forward a motion that we vote on school choice.
Which to vote to participate or to not participate?
Oh, to not participate, sorry.
Okay, moved that the committee chooses to not participate in the Commonwealth School Choice Program. Is there a second to that?
Second. Sorry, Alicia, you
Okay.
second. It's all you.
Okay, Barry and then Alicia. Okay, any further discussion on that motion? Okay, let's take a vote. Oh, yep.
Just a quick comment. Last year I strongly support this program, and now with Dr. Nolan's input, we understand that this is not the good year to start this. I fully agree. But also I'd like to just repeat what she said. I encourage the school committee to consider it and take that up early next year so a decision can be made in early winter time. So I just hope that we will still have meaningful discussion later this year. So because we did a lot of work and this is not a good year, but I still hope that this, if turned out to be a good way to increase our budget to a certain degree, even not that much, still a good gesture and good move to show committee we are serious about school budget. And that's very meaningful and significant. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, let's take a vote. Ward 1. The
Yes.
motion is to not participate in school choice. Just
Yes.
Ward 2, yes. Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 8,
Yes.
and Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
Okay. No school choice for the upcoming year. All right, our last agenda item is an update on the year 26 budget.
Sorry. I thought you were. So at this time, I've distributed to everybody the feedback from Andy Waugh, the school attorney. And today, Jill Murray Grady received from the city solicitor a follow-up memo, which has also been distributed to you. So that was the outcome of the last meeting request for that information. So you have that in hand. Happy to answer any questions from that. Second, on Thursday, Liam and I will be at City Council presenting the current state of the budget, and hopefully questions from the City Council will come beforehand. There have been a lot of discussions back and forth. I followed up with a memo, which I shared with all of you, answering their questions from the last meeting. Most of the questions we're answering focus on circuit breaker. And I think, questions about how is that used? Why is it allowed? Why is there money from prior years being brought forward into subsequent years? So Liam and I have spent a lot of time answering those questions with counselors. One counselor is asking to visit classrooms of special ed programs this week to take a look at some of the things that parents have been sharing. So of course, ever the advocate, I will be doing those visits. Other than that, there's been discussion of the proposal of compromise that was presented on April 2nd, and whether that's actually something that you all support. So there may be a time where if that is what is presented, we come back and we have that discussion about compromise, or if the number stays where the number is, we will have to come back and I will again affirm to you what the number of cuts would be, and we would have that discussion. Many of you have been asking questions about the cost savings of other things in the budget. So I'm anticipating that you all are gearing up for another discussion on what we can fund and can't fund in the subsequent year if the allocation remains where we are. So that's the only change since we met last week, is the legal memos in your hands.
Thank you. Rajiv?
So I'm sorry, I find it extremely disturbing that, let me provide a little background. Parents in Newton of special education students are strongly discouraged from touring programs unless a specific program has been recommended for their child. This has been an issue for parents. If you've been recommended a program and you think there's a different one that might work for your kid, too bad. You don't get to see it. I don't understand, number one, why touring any special education program is relevant to what a city councilor's opinion is of what's going on. But it certainly flies in the face of established, maybe unwritten policy in the school district. So I don't think it's okay. There are also privacy issues and other challenges that are often quoted by OSS to parents about why visits are carefully monitored, and the school committee is in a different situation when we tour something from the city council.
So we made visits to schools available to all counselors last year on 7 occasions.
Right.
So the issue here is that the 2 programs that are being potentially impacted by budget cuts were not were not in those 7 groups where we went and took those visits. So the question, there's just a lack of trust. I guess the quote is, the superintendent's word is not gospel. The impacts to these cuts, like what would they be? So it's not to visit the classrooms, it's to speak to the principal.
So which two special ed, I'm assuming citywide?
Yep,
programs?
Anger's program for dyslexia and Countryside's Spark.
Which are currently existing programs.
Correct.
So what impacts have we brought up to these 2 programs? Because I don't think I remember seeing that.
So the 5 additional teachers that are cut from, that may be cut from the budget, have budget impacts at these two schools. So trust me, I've been having the conversation with parents, like moving from 14 to 18 students in a class size. That's still within a normal range that I find acceptable. Families do not necessarily find that acceptable. So the case has been made to council, and they want to hear the impacts from the principals.
I'm very confused by this. So we're talking about impacts to special ed programs.
That have general education classes associated with them.
Right.
So the case has been made by parents that changing the ratio of teachers to students impacts how well the special ed component of that class runs.
Which is correct. But in the budget presentations we've had so far, and I keep an eye out for this, I didn't see anything that said we're going to reduce the number of teachers in a specific special ed program. We did talk about the new programs coming in where we're adding teachers.
So in the classroom arrays, there are impacts that don't change the class number of classrooms. It just changes going from like 14 to 18 students. Yes. So at Ainger and Countryside, they're not exempt from those particular changes. We still meet all the ratios for the Department of Education. We still meet all of the special ed services. It's a subjective scenario that parents are concerned about and principals are concerned about, and it's their job principal's job to advocate for their buildings. So lucky me, I have to make those decisions across all of that advocacy, just like you do.
So what are the city councilors going to be touring?
They're going to meet with the principals.
Okay, I'll hold off.
Barry? Yeah, I just want to echo what Rajiv is saying. I find it concerning and an odd level of oversight that they need to participate in. If it's not our duty to make that recommendation and work with you, then what is it that we're doing here? And it's their job to find the money and help make this work. It is not their job to go in and determine what is right based on our recommendation. So I don't know who those city councilors are. If you're listening, I'd be happy to talk with you, but privacy concerns, also just you're out of your element, not your gig. So don't like it. Oh, I'll add one more thing. Find the money, leave the classrooms alone.
Other comments? Tamika?
Thank you. So I just want to address the guidance that we've gotten now from two Attorney Wah and the city solicitor, which states that spending public funds beyond our approved allocation is problematic and that would expose individual members of this committee or the public schools who are so directed to knowingly violating this statute, exposes individual members of this committee or the staff to liability, which would include criminal or financial liability. I think it's important, again, for us to be very transparent about the limits of the advocacy and where the rubber hits the road if we don't raise those additional funds in order to make this school committee's approved budget a reality, meaning that there's an allocation which supports it. Short of those things, each member of this committee and any staff that acts to implement such a budget would face those penalties. So I think that's very important to make very clear to everyone who is encouraging us to do something we legally cannot, should not do. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? On Ping?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that Dr. Nolan mentioned the compromised budget proposal, and I know that it's kind of we both make our efforts, school side and city side. So probably I should remember all the numbers, but I think probably it's meaningful to go through one more time. Let's understand if, for example, city mayor's office did not give one more cents. Oh, sorry. Getting too smart. I'm not asking question here. So, or probably I'm asking question, but I don't think Siri can answer that question, at least not this moment. So if city does not make any concession or whatever compromise, do we do that on our part to assume whatever the risk of whatever the cutting ourselves? Because this have to be both efforts, even we made all our efforts, still we cannot close the gap because we need city to help us. So I just first, would you or
Yes.
Chris go through the numbers so we understand the numbers in my mind, and then to see whether we can bilaterally if we should do something and to show the community we are making our efforts.
So if the numbers stay exactly as they are, then all of the cuts that have previously been discussed will be made. So that is the $2.2 million of cuts.
On our part.
Yes.
Which could you go through a little bit more, 2.2 million, including, I apologize to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
And just to clarify on Ping, that's $2.2 million of reductions, but that could be $3 million if the kindergarten aids are implemented in full.
Let's leave that kindergarten for a moment.
Just want to make clear that that's not included in the $2.2 million.
So that is 10.88 FTE for student services, teachers, and support reduction. That's 5 additional elementary teacher reductions. That's 3 digital media literacy teachers. 0.9 FTE of elementary specialists, so art, music, and PE, that are the commensurate reduction with an additional 5, loss of 5 elementary teachers.
So how many add together? I'm sorry.
So altogether, that is, well, there's more. So those are the staffing reductions. So it's 19.78 staffing. And then the additional monies are those expense reductions. So the field trip stipends, the principal retreat, the late bus for athletics, scholarship testing, the MCAS stipends. And there is also an additional set of risk that we've already talked about with our city partners about a spending freeze now, and then a complete drain on revolving accounts to the tune of $350,000. So that's taking up our carry forward, our circuit breaker carry forward to 3.3 million from 2.5.
Now my question is, are we ready to do that regardless where there's offer from city or not? Because
well, if there's an offer from the city, no, I don't want to do that.
Okay, that's I'm looking for this answer.
Because
it's very painful when you assume the risk. This term, already alarm a lot of people because it's very risky.
Right.
Move. We don't know for sure.
Right.
You will make this sacrifice because the money was not guaranteed.
Yeah.
And it just assume that, especially the break, circuit break money, there are a lot of other factors. Okay, so we are not ready if there no, offer from the city's department or mayor's office. So, okay, thanks.
Other, Rajiv?
I just wanted to come back to Tamika's statement. Having looked at the email, Anna, that you shared earlier, and then also keeping in mind the context from the previous meeting, the discussion you and Liam had with the comptroller in terms of setting up accounts, having funds available for commitments we already have, and how it seems clear that those accounts simply cannot be set up until we have a budget whose bottom line matches the bottom line of what's going to be allocated. I think we are in that situation where at a certain point, and my question is going to be about the date by which this has to happen, we have to get to that match and provide guidance on what are going to be some difficult decisions. Because again, given the legal guidance, there is no way that we are going to put the NPS staff in legal jeopardy. And that's where you would be.
Right. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So that is not going to happen.
Yep.
So the question then becomes, at what point, at what point does the advocacy have to stop in order for us to get to that budget? And again, get back to probably doing things that we are going to be incredibly unhappy about.
I mean, there's no deadline. We have to be ready to roll by June 30th. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ruth Ann, there's like a 45-day waiting period after everything is, city council is voted and all of that. No waiting period?
The 45 days refers to the time period when a mayor presents the budget. The city council has 45 days to act or, oddly enough, not act. Either way, then the budget
Thank you.
is decided.
I think that's the outer limit.
Got it.
So whatever 45 days is after April 22nd.
I can't remember offhand.
It's
but I
June-
do have it written
June-ish.
down somewhere.
But I think we probably, before school ends, we would like to be able to tell people where they're heading. June 15th is that deadline for us.
Okay.
So.
Which and again, that is to provide more certainty to our staff,
Right.
without keeping them hanging.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Tamika?
Just building off of Rajiv's comment, if June 15th, on or about that date is our line in the sand, if you will, I would urge us to have pre-scheduled, pre-reserved some days where we can meet to do the work that needs to be done and not assume that anything that we already have scheduled is going to be sufficient for that purpose. So I know how calendars lock up. I'd put that forward as something we just do and have as a placeholder if we need it.
Okay. Doodle poll coming to you soon.
Anything else? There.
The 45 days is Friday, June 6th.
Okay. Not seeing anyone else with comments. So I think that concludes our agenda for this evening, and we are adjourned.
Record.